My name is Lucy Collins, and at 39 years old, I never thought the first hint of betrayal would feel like a scent. But there it was, subtle, impossible to ignore, a mixture of vanilla, musk, and something crisp that wasn't mine. I prided myself on noticing details. As a logistics manager, patterns were my language, and anomalies were my alarm bells. And now, for the first time in 15 years of marriage, my instincts screamed. Andrew, my husband of 12 years, was late. Again. Not just late, distracted. Distracted in a way that made the space between us taut, like a wire stretched too tight. His once calm smile now carried a twitch, a hesitation I didn't recognize. He told me it was just work. Nothing to worry about, he said, but his phone never left his side, vibrating with quiet urgency. And there was Lena. Lena, 28, Andrew's new personal trainer. A whirlwind of confidence, charm, and teeth, so white they gleamed like polished porcelain. She had become the axis around which Andrew's world spun. Not fitness, not health, not me, but her. I watched him change his schedule around her classes, subtly shifting our dinners and weekends, justifying it with vague wellness priorities. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I had become predictable. Maybe grounding Andrew with stability and calm was no longer enough. But the scent told me something words could not. Vanilla, musk, expensive perfume. It was Lena. It started 8 months ago. A wellness phase, he called it. A detox from stress. A pursuit of inner energy. I supported him, as I always had, buying organic groceries, rearranging our schedules, even joining him in early morning stretches that left me awkward and sore. But Lena wasn't just a trainer. She was a life strategist, guiding him through chakras, meditation, affirmations, and retreats that lasted entire weekends. Their names floated in his texts, blurred on the screen when he thought I wasn't looking. Lena says you're holding stagnant energy. I remember the first night I felt truly uneasy. I came home early, just an hour ahead of schedule. The house smelled different. Cedar, sandalwood, faint citrus. My kitchen, our living room, transformed, foreign. Andrew appeared flustered, pulling his shirt over his chest like he had been caught. Lucy, you're home early? Yeah, Lena just stopped by, testing some new fitness oils. You know. His words stumbled, uneven. I didn't confront him. Not yet. My steadiness was my weapon. I had spent my career managing logistics, tracking assets, observing patterns, documenting inconsistencies. If I raised my voice now, I risked losing the facts to emotion. I needed evidence, a meticulous record of the truth. The next weekend, while Andrew was away at a weekend warrior retreat with Lena, whatever that meant, I upgraded our home security. 3 tiny, inconspicuous cameras in the living room, kitchen, and foyer. Motion activated, silent, perfectly legal. This was my battlefield. Not confrontation, not accusation, but observation. Monday afternoon, I watched the footage. Lucy Foster, calm, composed, sitting on the edge of my leather couch with a mug of tea in hand, staring at a world that had suddenly shifted under my feet. Andrew returned at 3:00 p.m., exactly on schedule. At 3:15, Lena arrived, and then the world slowed. They weren't just talking about workouts. They weren't just laughing. They were intimately close, touching, sharing, like the house belonged to them, not to me. My chest tightened, but I forced my hands to remain still. My heartbeat was loud in my ears, yet my mind was calculating, precise. It wasn't anger yet, not fully. It was awareness, the cold, sharp clarity that comes when a system you thought you understood begins to fail. For 2 months, I watched every interaction, morning routines, afternoon visits, laughter, toasting with my whiskey to their energy alignment. Every detail meticulously recorded. Over 300 hours of footage. Every minute a testament to my husband's duplicity. And through it all, I maintained the mask. "How was your day, honey?" I'd ask, voice calm, betraying nothing. "Exhausting," Andrew would reply. Lena pushed me hard, and I'd nod. "Sounds intense," I'd murmur, hiding the storm inside. Each word a brick in the fortress I was building, not just for myself, but for the inevitable confrontation. I started imagining the day I'd confront him, how I'd do it methodically, strategically. No yelling, no sobbing, no accusations, only facts, evidence, reality projected in cold clarity. But even in my planning, the betrayal stung. The betrayal of my trust, of my home, of the life we built together. I remembered how grounding I had been for Andrew, how I remembered birthdays, anniversaries, work milestones. And now, all that stability, all that devotion had been quietly replaced by someone else, someone younger, brighter, and fully consuming the life I thought we shared. By the time Andrew returned from the retreat that Sunday evening, I had made my decision. I wouldn't react with emotion. I would react with precision. My tools were ready, my evidence secure, and my mind clear. Lena may have thought she had infiltrated our world, but she had underestimated me. And Andrew, he had no idea what was coming. I told myself I wasn't doing this out of anger. I was doing it because I had to know. Because as a logistics manager, patterns were my language, and Andrew's had changed. Every morning, every evening, every text he tried to hide, it all became data, evidence waiting to be cataloged. I became the observer of my own marriage, and it was terrifying. The cameras I installed were tiny, almost invisible, tucked into objects that had always been part of our home. One in the living room, hidden inside that hideous metal sculpture Andrew hated, but I'd insisted we keep. Another on the kitchen shelf, angled toward the island. The third perched on the foyer bookshelf, capturing anyone who came and went. Motion activated, silent, recording in crisp 1080p. No audio, just images. But sometimes, gestures speak louder than words. The first day, Andrew returned from the gym early, or so he claimed. Lena arrived shortly after, her smile wide, her energy intoxicating. The moment I watched them together, I felt the sharp jolt of disbelief. Not a whisper of guilt, not a single glance toward the camera. They laughed, flirted, brushed hands, touched shoulders. On my kitchen island, on the couch, everywhere my eyes would normally land. It wasn't just physical. It was easy, intimate, casual. Every gesture spoke of a world where I didn't exist. And yet, Andrew walked past the cameras countless times, oblivious, or perhaps confident that I wouldn't see. For weeks I watched. Patterns emerged. Morning coffee together, shared smiles over toast, afternoon smoothies in the kitchen, toasts with my whiskey. They were building a secret life in my home, one room at a time. And every evening, when Andrew and I exchanged pleasantries over dinner, he wore the same calm mask, pretending nothing had shifted, pretending our marriage was intact. I cataloged everything: dates, times, movements. A spreadsheet became my diary of betrayal. Every day I grew colder, more deliberate. My internal monologue became a litany of what-ifs, strategies, and scenarios. How would I confront him? What could I say that would be indisputable? I wasn't seeking revenge, at least not yet. I was seeking truth, pure and undeniable. And yet, the more I watched, the more complicated the emotions became. Anger mixed with sorrow, betrayal with disbelief. Andrew wasn't just cheating. He was living a double life, performing it with a smugness that stung more than any scream or accusation could. Lena wasn't just a trainer. She was a shadow that had crept into our home, our routines, even our memories. One afternoon, I sat with a cup of tea, staring at the footage on my laptop. Lena arrived at exactly 3:12 p.m. Andrew followed at 3:17. 15 minutes later, they were on the couch, laughing over something trivial, hands brushing casually. My chest tightened, my stomach sank, and yet my mind remained analytical. I backed up every clip, labeling files with precision. Breakfast, lunch, evening. Weekdays, weekends. Over 300 hours of evidence accumulated before either of them suspected. The suspense was unbearable at times. I couldn't confront him yet. There was no proof outside these recordings. Any accusation would have been dismissed as paranoia. I had to be patient, methodical. And patience, I learned, was a sharper weapon than confrontation. I noticed the smallest details. Lena's perfume lingering in the hallway long after she left. Andrew's phone lighting up with texts from her at odd hours. A wrist touch, a shared joke, a glance that lingered too long. It all fit together, like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't realized existed. My world had quietly become theirs. And yet I couldn't bring myself to hate Lena entirely. She was merely the catalyst, the visible thread in a tapestry of lies woven by Andrew. He had chosen her, and every day his choice became clearer. My heartbreak was filtered through reason, not emotion. I was watching a life I once shared dissolve, pixel by pixel, frame by frame. Evenings were the hardest. Andrew would sit across from me at dinner, smiling, telling stories about his day. I nodded, asking polite questions, all the while having watched footage of him and Lena just hours before, intimately entwined, in my living room. My mind would replay their laughter, their touches, the casual joy I had been denied. But no tears escaped, not yet. My calm exterior was my shield. I started planning for the inevitable confrontation, not a shouting match, not a tearful accusation. Evidence, proof, truth presented in undeniable form. I imagined the day I would hand over the hard drive, 300 hours compressed into undeniable reality. Andrew's smug smile, his excuses, his gaslighting, all rendered meaningless in the face of documented proof. Sometimes I'd pause the footage, staring at him laughing with her, at the home we built together becoming theirs. I would breathe deeply, reminding myself, calm, precise, methodical. The storm of emotion was there, simmering, but I could not let it dictate my actions. Not yet. And still, the question lingered in my mind, always. When the time came, would justice feel like triumph, or would it feel hollow? Would exposing Andrew's lies restore anything, or simply confirm the truth I had known all along? One thing was certain. The world Andrew thought he controlled, our home, our life, was now under my watchful eye. And when the moment came, I would strike not with anger, but with inevitability. Because knowledge, after all, is power. The day I confronted Andrew didn't feel like a battle. It felt like precision. Years of analytical thinking, surveillance, and patient observation had led to this moment. I had my evidence neatly organized. 3 hidden cameras, 300 hours of footage, every interaction cataloged, every intimate gesture documented. I wasn't here to yell or cry. I was here to show the truth. Andrew arrived home that evening, casual as ever, carrying the faint scent of Lena's perfume like a badge. He smiled, unsuspecting, oblivious to the fact that the woman he believed was naive and trusting had spent months meticulously building a record of his duplicity. "How was your day?" he asked, dropping his keys on the counter. His tone was light, but there was a subtle tension in the curl of his lips. "Fine," I said, calm, measured. "Andrew, we need to talk." He froze slightly, just enough for me to notice, but he masked it quickly. "Talk about what?" he asked, feigning ignorance. I gestured toward the sleek black hard drive on the counter. "This. Everything you've been trying to hide." His eyes flickered, hesitation just beneath the surface. "Lucy, No," I interrupted. My voice was steady, almost cold. "Not excuses. Facts." I could see him calculating, trying to buy time, to reshape the narrative in his favor. But it was too late. The footage spoke louder than words. Morning routines, afternoon visits, shared laughter, gestures, touches, all documented. Lena wasn't just visiting. She wasn't just a trainer. She was living inside our marriage, claiming space that belonged to me. And Andrew had facilitated it at every turn. I watched him process the weight of evidence in his eyes, the slow realization that his calm facade had failed. "Lucy, Andrew," I said, cutting him off again. "I know everything. 300 hours. Every smile, every touch, every lie. It's all here." He faltered. His excuses, rehearsed over countless afternoons, dissolved. He stammered about stress, about emotional distance, about Lena being a friend. None of it mattered anymore. I wasn't listening to excuses. I was holding proof. That night, I called Dave, my lawyer. Sharp, methodical, unflinching, a perfect counterpart to my planning. I handed him the hard drive, watched him nod, and felt a flicker of satisfaction. Finally, all the patience, all the meticulous work had a purpose beyond sleepless nights and heartbreak. The legal escalation was swift. Andrew, predictably, sought to portray himself as the victim, claiming emotional neglect and demanding alimony for his own suffering. He even hired a lawyer who exuded smug confidence, like the world was on their side. But I had something stronger, the unassailable truth. When mediation began, Andrew sat across from me, his posture rigid, his expression carefully neutral. The air was thick with tension. His lawyer read statements accusing me of coldness, detachment, even psychological abuse. Andrew nodded along, eyes occasionally flicking toward me, as if daring me to crack. I remained calm, polished, in control. Then, with Dave's subtle nod, I presented the hard drive. 300 hours of footage condensed into undeniable evidence of Andrew's duplicity. The clips played, Andrew and Lena laughing in the kitchen, toasting with my whiskey, sharing intimate touches on my couch, the entire life they had secretly built. I watched as Andrew's face paled, his carefully maintained mask crumbling. Lena, of course, wasn't in the room, but her presence was felt in every frame, a silent accusation that hung over him like a shadow. The courtroom fell silent. The judge, an experienced woman who had clearly seen the lies of 1,000 manipulators, leaned forward. She scrutinized the evidence, her eyes narrowing as the footage confirmed what words could not. Andrew's lawyer sputtered, objecting, claiming invasion of privacy, abuse, impropriety. Dave remained unshaken, calmly explaining the legality. Video only in common areas of a property owned solely by the client, no audio recording, no laws violated. The judge nodded, her expression a mix of disbelief and mild amusement. By the time the first montage ended, kitchen, living room, foyer, the room was thick with tension. Andrew's excuses evaporated into thin air. The judge's gaze swept over him, disbelief tempered with sharp, judicial clarity. She asked him directly, "And you claim emotional suffering during this time?" His words faltered. The reality in 1080p was undeniable. The life he had been claiming to be oppressed by was a life of his own making, full of joy with another woman. As the hearing concluded, it was clear who held the upper hand. Andrew had miscalculated, underestimated the patience and precision of a woman scorned not by passion, but by logic and evidence. The weight of perjury, of lies exposed, hung over him like a guillotine. And me? I felt a calm satisfaction, a strange mix of relief and lingering sorrow. The betrayal was real, but so was the justice. I had watched, waited, and struck, not with anger, but with inevitability. This wasn't just about exposing infidelity. It was about reclaiming the life that had been quietly stolen from me. Every documented moment of betrayal became a brick in the wall that would finally protect my future, my autonomy, and my dignity. The day of the final hearing arrived with a strange calm. I, Lucy Foster, 39, walked into the courtroom feeling a mixture of exhaustion and clarity. The months of surveillance, sleepless nights, and meticulous planning had led to this moment. Every recorded frame, every detail, every calculated move, all of it culminated here. Andrew sat across from me, his expression tense, shoulders tight. For once, the smug confidence he had worn like armor was gone. He shifted in his chair, glancing at the evidence, at his lawyer, at the judge, hoping for some miracle to save him. But miracles don't come to those who lie with such audacity. Judge Harriet Rowe, a woman who had clearly seen every betrayal imaginable, presided with quiet authority. Her eyes swept the room, taking in the tension, the silent standoff, the palpable stakes. She had already reviewed the preliminary evidence in chambers, and the weight of truth hung over Andrew like a storm cloud. The hearing began. Andrew's lawyer attempted to speak, but his words were cautious, defensive, rehearsed. He portrayed Andrew as emotionally neglected, manipulated, a victim of psychological abuse. But I had learned long ago that lies crumble in the light of facts. Dave, my lawyer, stood calmly. He had been my partner in this methodical, patient campaign for truth. In one fluid motion, he placed the sleek black hard drive on the table. 300 hours of video, silent, precise, undeniable. "Your Honor," Dave said, his voice smooth and commanding, "my client has been accused of coldness and abuse. However, this footage tells a different story. It documents a relationship that the plaintiff, Miss Andrews' spouse, pursued outside of the marriage. Every claim of emotional suffering is contradicted by 300 hours of recorded reality. The courtroom screens lit up. The montage began. Clips of Andrew and Lena laughing in the kitchen, toasting with my whiskey, cozying on the couch. The footage played not as accusation, but as evidence. The life they had built secretly. The joy he claimed I had denied him. Captured in cold, unflinching clarity. I watched Andrew's face as the clips played. Pale, stiff, shocked. Words he had prepared, rehearsed excuses for months, vanished into thin air. Lena's absence in the courtroom only emphasized the betrayal. Her presence alive in every pixel, every frame, haunting him. Judge Rowe's voice cut through the tension. "And you claim emotional suffering during this time?" Her gaze locked on him, unwavering. He faltered, stammered, looked down. The judge shook her head slowly. "The evidence is irrefutable. This court finds the claims of emotional distress entirely fabricated. Motion for temporary spousal support is denied. Furthermore, due to clear perjury and bad faith filing, the plaintiff will bear half of the legal costs incurred by the defendant for this hearing." Silence fell. Andrew's lawyer slumped in his chair, face pale. Andrew's own face mirrored defeat, disbelief, and the sudden crushing weight of accountability. It wasn't just legal victory, it was reclamation. Every stolen moment, every lie, every betrayal, I had turned into undeniable truth. My life, my dignity, my home, finally vindicated. The divorce finalized 6 weeks later. Andrew, stripped of leverage, walked away with nothing more than the hollow echo of his choices. Lena, abandoned as swiftly as she had invaded, returned to her own stagnant energy, her presence erased from the life she had tried to claim. The house, our home, the battleground of hidden joys and secret betrayals, was sold. Marital property divided fairly, though Andrew's 70% of equity was all that remained after legal fees. I moved into a downtown condo, clean, peaceful, smelling of nothing but quiet victory. And the small victories mattered. That hideous metal sculpture, the hiding place for my cameras, now rested with Lena, or rather, the remnants of the battle she never understood. A $12,200 symbol of audacity. Now a reminder of the folly that comes from underestimating a methodical mind. I sat in my new home, alone but free. The city lights through the window casting patterns that reminded me of all I had endured and all I had reclaimed. The betrayal had been real, devastating, but it had taught me the power of patience, observation, and precision. I had watched a life dissolve in 1080p and emerge not bitter, but steady. For the first time in months, I breathed freely. My world was mine again. I was not just Lucy Foster, wife betrayed. I was Lucy Foster, woman who had observed, documented, and reclaimed the truth. And in that clarity, there was peace.